So I've just been out shooting some video to test and compare all the different film simulations on the Fuji X-T3. And the base film simulation is Provia. This is the standard one. This is the one that they give you and is the default option for film simulation. And I think it's a good choice for that because it's truly a good all-round profile. I think it's got really good color. It's still got plenty of pop, but it's not too contrasty, so you don't have a tendency to blow out the highlights or have the shadows be crushed. And it does maintain some decent dynamic range, so there's still plenty of editing that you can do once you get it in your JPEG into the computer or you get the video into the computer. So I think they've picked this one as a standard, and I think it is a really good base color profile for Fuji. And I think a lot of times when people think of Fuji colors, there's two things they think of. They either think of sort of the wild film simulation where they've taken the different profiles and really tweaked them out to make them look super vintage or super flat, or they're actually thinking of some really vibrant, rich colors, which I would say most of the time is Provia with or without a little bit of editing. The next one is Velvia. Now, Velvia, for me, in 90% of cases, just has way too much punch, too much contrast, too much color. It really crushes the blacks. It blows out the highlights. I think there's a very limited number of situations where I would consider using this. And in theory, when you compare it to some of the Canon colors, this is similar to what Canon markets as their sort of landscape, where the blues pop and the greens pop. But I feel like it just doesn't really work in the Fuji camera. And when I look at that film simulation and I look at the natural world and the greens and the browns and the blues, I really don't like what I'm seeing there. And it's the one film simulation that really I don't have much use for. The one time I could imagine using it is if you're in a situation where all the colors and everything is gray and really, really dull, and you're just trying to liven the scene up. I would consider putting it into Velvia and then using it in that situation just to bring out some color of a scene that really doesn't have much color. So for the most part, not a whole lot of time for Velvia, but that's the one situation I would consider using it in. And the next one is Astia, and Astia's, it's okay. I don't love it. I don't hate it. I think it's supposed to be good on skin tones, and it's supposed to be good for portrait photography. It's called Astia/soft, and I think the soft it's a lower contrast, doesn't show the wrinkles on a face. I think it's more of a beautifying profile, specifically for taking pictures of people and doing headshots and portraits and stuff like that. And to me, this is one I can sort of take it or leave it. I don't dislike it like Velvia, but I don't love it, kind of like I do Provia. And then from here on in, the rest of the profiles I really, really like, and I find specific situations where I could use any of the following profiles. Now, Classic Chrome, of course, is a classic, and yeah, this is a super popular profile. It really looks like some sort of vintage film stock, and I don't know what they do with it, something with the blue cast or something, but yeah, it just looks really great. And it is actually the basis for a lot of the film simulation recipes are out there, particularly on Fuji Weekly, the guy that sort of conjures up his own film recipes to impersonate other film stock that Fuji hasn't put into the camera. Classic Chrome seems to be the #1 simulation he uses for his base, and you can see why. This is the one, when you go to it, to me, it instantly looks like some sort of vintage film stock. Now, Neg High is one of my favorite. I really like Neg High. It definitely has a film-like feel. It definitely is a film simulation. It feels like a film simulation, but it's still got really good color. It's got good contrast, but it's not blowing out the highlights. It's not crushing the blacks. It actually is a very natural profile. And as somebody who also shoots Canon, it reminds me a lot of Canon's neutral picture profile, which is probably the one I use most on that camera. But yeah, it looks really good straight out of camera, and it responds very well to editing. So Another good one, can't go wrong with this one. Yeah, one of my favorites. And the next one is Pro Neg Standard, and Pro Neg Standard is just a slightly lower contrast color than Pro Neg High. Another one very good for editing. Probably looks a bit more vintage. It does have a sort of a washed out film-like look, but still a very natural look. And this is a sort of a theme through all of these. Fuji's given us film simulations, but they haven't really gone crazy with it and given you anything that is just going to turn somebody off and people are going to think that's awful. And at times, when you look at these at first, and as you've looked at through these videos, at times you might even think these are almost too similar. I wish they were different. But that's where these third-party film recipes that are come up with on the internet, and you can get off Fuji Weekly, you can take these different film simulations and tweak them in a number of different ways. And Fuji, rather than giving you some crazy out there film simulations in camera, they've actually given you the tools to take one of their film simulations as a base and then cook up your own version of that. And for filming, now we've got to the sort of the granddaddy of them all, the king, the profile that movie makers and filmmakers absolutely love. And if you're not shooting an F-Log in this camera, you're almost certainly shooting in Eterna. And Eterna has actually been used for TV commercials and documentaries and short movies, and it's an extremely powerful film simulation because it gives you a significant amount of dynamic range, but it still has decent color and contrast. So it gives you a starting point which is much closer to where you want to end up than F-Log. And F-Log can be very difficult to use, very difficult to expose properly. You won't notice in camera if you've got your white balance wrong. All kinds of things can go wrong in camera, but because that image is so washed out, you won't know until you get it into editing. And then when you do get it into editing with F-Log, it starts out so far from the finished product that editing process can be long and cumbersome. And for myself personally, I almost am incapable of taking F-Log and taking it to a point where it's at a finished product that I'm happy with. Where with Eterna, I can take it right out of camera and do nothing with it, and I think it looks amazing. But most of the time, I just tweak the contrast, tweak the shadows or highlights or midtones. Super simple editing, and you can bring this profile, you can bring this film simulation and make it look a number of different ways. It's got so much flexibility, but it's so close to the finished product that I want. It really is a dream come true, and in all the cameras that I've used, this is by far the best picture profile or film simulation or color profile, whatever you want to call it. And certainly for shooting video, I think this is the most popular one in the Fujifilm cameras for sure. And I think probably potentially the best one in any of the cameras that you can get. And if you want any more information about the Fuji line of cameras, I'll put a playlist right over here. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay creative.